Hi, and welcome to Learn with Sawgrass. I'm Rhonda, the Education Manager here at Sawgrass, and we're so glad you're joining us. Whether that's live or whether that's a little bit later on in the recording, we're so glad to have you here. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Rhodes is with us handling sound and lights and all that fun stuff, and he's also in the chat. So if you have any questions or would like to make any comments, please feel free. He'll answer you, and then I'll pester him at least 3 times to see if there's anything I can assist with. We do come to you every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern and then every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern to just give you a little help, some tips and tricks, and hopefully some inspiration on how to use your Sawgrass printer. Today, if you had looked at the schedule last week, you will see this topic has changed. And I'm going to pull the curtain back. I'm going to be honest with you. These are 3 things that have come out of tech support tickets. So these are things that our care team is hearing. Our care team has noticed that people need clarification on. And so I decided to handle them for them and kind of give you some guidance. So hopefully we'll be able to, you may see this as some clips too a little bit later on, just to kind of help with these topics. But we do have 3 today. To me, these are all about workflow. So how you create, how you save, how you print. So that's kind of what I'm calling this. So here are some tips and tricks that I think will help your workflow. Now, I'll go ahead and be honest right at the beginning about the 3 things we're going to talk about today. First, we're going to talk about save and save as in the design tool. Secondly, we're going to talk about bleeds, bleed lines, and then general positioning of your item. So that's going to be number 2. And then our third topic for today is going to be about getting your files into the Sawgrass print utility and what workflow on paper is going to work best for you. So we're going to dive really deep. I've covered this topic a few times, but I just want to cover it one more time from the perspective of where I think your sweet spot may be, depending on how you're printing and pressing. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So I am going to start today in my Sawgrass. We're going to go ahead and hit the design tool. Now, what I'm going to do is I am going to start with that topic of bleeds and bleed lines and positioning and all that fun stuff. And then I'll just use that file a little bit later on for my save and save as. So let's go ahead and do that. And I today have with me a dog tag. So we are going to use that for this example. All right, so when you open a template in the Sawgrass or in the My Sawgrass design tool, and I do want to step back a second. This conversation is not just for people using the My Sawgrass design tool. So I'm going to use this to demo, but all of these words I'm going to use in this concept that I'm going to discuss is for everyone. So no matter how you are bringing your files in, if you haven't tuned out yet, don't tune out. This is going to apply to you as well. So the way our design tool works is you're bringing in the product, and your product, you're going to notice, has a red area. I think when a lot of people say they're having sizing issues, this is also part of it, is understanding this whole concept. So everything that is white is going to be your print area. That is the physical dimensions of my dog tag. So the dog tag size, if I were to print from side to side, which looking at this is probably an inch, inch and a quarter. And I love guessing sizes if you haven't figured that out yet. But it is roughly an inch and a quarter across, and that's what that white area is. If I were to fill the white area, that is exactly what area would be filled. That's what you're going to see. Now you're noticing there is this red area, and we're going to call that a bleed. So what a bleed does is it adds area to what prints. So let's say, I should have brought a ruler, so I apologize, that this is 1.25 inches. You're probably looking at 1.5 inches or a little bit bigger is what it's going to print. Now, that bleed area does not go on what you print. So if I were to put Rhodes's face halfway, so half of his face was on the white and half of his face was on the red, whatever's in the red is not going onto the dog tag. Only what is in the white is going to go into the dog tag. But the bleed area is very important, and it's going to be important for a couple of different reasons. The first reason you're going to need that bleed area is if I were not doing a dog tag, if I were doing neoprene, if I were doing a sock, if I were doing a shirt, these are things that get what I call squished in the press, and the area is going to enlarge. So if I were to only cover that 1.25 inches and it were to stretch, then what's going to happen is I'm going to end up with some white area. So the bleed is kind of your safety zone. So if the item were to expand in the press, or stretch in the press, you were still getting all of that area covered. The other thing that can happen is you may not tape it down perfectly. It may shift. So this is going to give you that protection to make sure that if I want this to be solid red with the design on it, that's exactly what's going to happen. Now, the second reason the bleed is going to be important, and this is the reason we're here talking about this, is it helps you with positioning. Another thing that people will often refer to is a bleed line. A bleed line, or you sometimes will hear them called registration marks. Registration marks are really used in cutters and other devices so that the cutter is basically calibrating off of those marks to make sure that it's cutting the right area. But a lot of people use them to help line things up. So a bleed line is going to be a line of box corners around your item so that you can position it within that. I will tell you that I use a bleed area the same way you use a bleed line. So there was a bleed line in the Sawgrass print manager. We did not feel that it was a great line. We did not feel that it worked the way it should. It was a little too heavy, and to my liking, it was a little too close to the item. That is sublimation ink. There is a good chance that's going to get on the product. And so we made the decision to not include that in the Sawgrass print utility. But there are still things to do to help you. And the first one that I would suggest is fully using that print area and using that bleed area around your design. So let's go ahead and throw something on here. I haven't put a lot of thought into what I'm going to pull, so I'm going to pull something that works. Okay. I am doing a full search. We do know full searches are a little slower, but we are working on that, of course. Let's actually go with this because I think this can work for what I'm doing. Okay. So I'm going to highlight the whole area. I am going to pull this out so that it does completely cover. And then I'm going to grab this A and the circle. And I'm going to move those down, of course, to get them out of the tag. And down to the middle. Okay, great. So there is my design. It is all lined up. It is ready to go. We're going to go ahead and hit print. Take that into our print utility. All right. We're just going to give that a second. We're going to hit print on that. Now I am printing from within the design tool in this instance because for now I don't need to save this or do anything else with it. I'm going to talk about that more in a moment. Okay. Okay, we are signed in. If you haven't seen it yet, one of my absolute favorite features is now, depending on what I choose, this is going to show me what the recommended print and press settings are, or the recommended press settings are for my item. I clicked a little too fast there. There we go. All right, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to tell this that this is going on to metal. And you're going to see my press settings for metal. Now, again, always, always, always trust what your dealer says first, because ours is just a general setting for metal. It's not specifically off of the product. So if they have settings that are different, go with what they say. But these are general guidelines if you need them. So nothing major here. I'm going to go ahead and print this out of my option tray because that's where my TruePix paper is. And there we go. Now, if you haven't seen it, I do operate with both a regular tray and a option tray. I love this because I have my VersaFlex paper in the top tray. This is a VersaFlex printer. And then in that second tray, I do have my regular TruePix paper. All right. Okay, so here's my design. When I am lining this up, I feel that the extra area helps because I am going to center it. So I have this nice big area that I can center that in, and I can use that for what I need. And I can center that right in the middle. And so for those of you who are looking for a bleed line to help you with centering, the bleed area does just that. Now, you say, Rhonda, you use something that had a template in the program. What if I am not doing that and I am creating from scratch? Well, if you are having to create from scratch and you are doing it that way, let's say you were using custom canvas. When you go into custom canvas, if I were to tell it that this is 1.25 by 5, it then has a bleed, and I'm going to put a 1/4 inch. It's going to put a 1/4 inch on all sides. So whether I am using a shape or whether I am just entering dimensions, you can still include that bleed area here to help you with that. Now, another scenario that you may do is, let's say that you're doing something that's bigger than your area. So I'm just going to go in and use a blank sheet for this particular example. Here's my 8.5 by 11. What I can do on my 8.5 by 11 is I'm going to create a shape. So I'm going to go to my elements, I'm going to go down to my shapes. I'm going to create, let's say I'm doing something that is a circle. I'm going to put my circle there. I'm going to size my circle to be the dimensions plus. I normally go about 1/4 inch on each side. You can do 0.125 as well. It really just depends on how much extra you want. And then of course, if we are talking the rest of the world, that is roughly 4 millimeters. So 4 or 5 millimeters is kind of where you're going to go. All right, so there is my circle. If I did not want to do this as a bleed area, but I wanted to do a bleed line, quite easily, I'm going to come in, I'm going to say none, and now I just have that outline, and I'm going to design within that line, and there is your bleed line, if that is your preferred method of doing this. Now, other tips, I know that Lori Donovan is probably here. One of the things that she has done is put an X above the design, and then that X is kind of that center point. So if you need a little more guidance, if it's something where it's not a full bleed that's going to go all the way to that edge, you could always put an X at the top of the design to kind of help guide you. Again, that would be a situation like this where you're going onto a full page, more so than using a product template. But that, or maybe just a little L or something that you could easily cut off in that bleed area, just to kind of give you some guidance if it's not something that's full bleed. So I hope that helps. I hope that kind of clarifies this concept of using a bleed or a bleed area and lining things up on your page. Rhodes, do we have any questions or comments?
No questions. Lori says you line the X up with the pink dots.
Okay, yeah, so the pink dots on the page, you line the X up and put it there, and then that kind of helps too. So that's the basics of positioning. A little bit of an explanation of why you're not seeing that bleed line, and an explanation of the difference between bleed area and bleed line, because they're a little different what they do. All right. So the next thing we want to cover today, one of those things that we're seeing some questions on, is this concept of save and save as. So in Creative Studio, our old design program, if I were to create this, I'm going to call it plaid dog tag, and I were to save it, and then I were to come back in tomorrow and open up that plaid dog tag and move my a fraction to the left or change my colors or whatever, it's going to save a second version. So that's what I refer to as save as. So in save as, that means every time you open it and make a change, it saves a version. So if I worked on something today, worked on it tomorrow, worked on it Friday, worked on it Saturday, worked on it Sunday, I have 5 versions of the same thing, and to clean things up, I would have to go in and delete the old ones. There are times where save as comes in really handy though, because if I were doing this as a line of plaid dog tags and I wanted to do the first initial of every letter, or I wanted to do every letter in the alphabet, I would want them all saved separately. And so I would actually want one for A and one for B and one for C and so forth and so on. The normal workflow that most people follow in the design tool is that they're opening from my studio, and I will show you. If I hit save and print, I'm going to give this a name. And I were to save it into a category. I'm going to randomly put that in mugs for now. This is going to take me into my product detail page. So what just happened was that saved to your galleries. So that saved a version to your galleries. I'm actually now going to save it into my studio. Now, let's discuss one more time. If I hit save, it saves it to my studio. No one accesses that. That's just mine. If I wanted to add this to my store for people to buy, which actually, if I were going to do a line of plaid dog tags, that would be a great thing to do. I'm going to hit post for sale. No one's going to see that unless I share the link, but the only way anything gets into your store is if you hit post for sale. I'm not going to do that today. I'm just going to hit save. That's going to add it to my studio. All right, so that is going to save, and it is saving across the top. Okay. All right. So that is now saved into my studio. If I were to click on the three dots and I were to hit open in Designer and go in and make that letter B and then do the same process and hit save, my A is gone and now I have a B. So that is what I call the save workflow, where everything is nice and neat. I only have one of everything I've done because I just save them over each other. But I do understand that in the case of this, especially if I were adding them into my store, I want them with every letter. Now, of course, the beauty of the My Sawgrass store, which again is only available in the US for now, with the My Sawgrass store, you can actually have the user customize, so they could change the letter or change the name, so you don't have to worry about that. But in this case, I would want all the letters. All right, so instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to design. I'm going to open up my dog tag again. And so I am opening up my dog tag, but instead of going to designs, which it is loading, I'm going to go to my gallery. Now, everything you add to the program, this is why you name it. It goes to your galleries. So if I go down to my designs and I go to my mugs folder, which we are working very diligently to increase speed in anywhere where it's having to pull things from the database, whether that's a search, whether that's here in my galleries. And to be honest with you, I spent a good part of last week on calls helping with that workflow. So we're definitely working there. So I'm going to click on my dog tag. It's going to bring it in. I'm going to resize it to fit properly. And then I am going to go in, I'm going to click on my letter A, and I'm going to change that letter A to a letter B. Now, when I go to save this, I'm going to hit print on this just because it's going to help me in the next segment. So we're going to go ahead and send that over real fast. But that's going to help me with that third point. Okay. So one moment while we send that over to print. All right. That is sending. We're just going to give it a good second. There we are. Okay, thank you. All right, there that is. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to close this and I'm going to hit save. I'm going to hit save and print. I'm going to get it the name B, letter B, and I'm going to hit save. So when this opens up in my product detail page and I hit save, now in my studio I'll have both my letter A and I'll have my letter B. And I'll hit save. And then I can go in and pull these up, make changes if necessary, print when I need to print. and do whatever I need to do right from my studio. So I hope that kind of explains this whole concept of where I say in this program we can do both save and we can do save as. Save is done by opening from your studio. Save as is done by opening from my galleries. And that's going to be the difference there. And if we look down, there's my A and there's my B. And I have them and I'm ready to go. Rhodes, do we have any questions?
We are caught up on questions.
It's funny, I think I'm going to hit exactly 3 times Pastorinio today because I have 3 segments. All right. Okay. So let's jump into this other thing that I want to go over today. So again, we're going over workflow today. We're covering some things that I've heard are in tickets and that I've heard from our support team. And just so you know, I think everyone knows this, but just to kind of go over it, I do sit on the product development team. And so where my role is education, I do work closely with our developers, with our software team. I work closely with research and development on products too. So when an issue comes up from our support team, when they are seeing something a lot, they're going to let us all know. And so we kind of go through, is this something that needs to change, or is this an education point? There's many ways that I can educate you. We do have the in-app education for you. We do have Rhodes' quick tip videos. We do have blogs, but sometimes it's just easiest to do it here in the workshop. So that's where we are today. And so I really wanted to take some time to talk about the various workflows and ways that you can bring products or projects into the Sawgrass print utility, and what I would say would be what I call the use case. So where I think kind of the sweet spot is and why you would use it. So we're going to walk through all of those workflows today and talk specifically about them. So the first one I want to talk about is if you are using the Sawgrass, the My Sawgrass design tool, which would be this case. Now, I told you I was bringing over a file just so we have it. You are going to notice that I have 2. So I do have both the A and I do have the B. And I am getting a message. Oh, has been changed, so no big either. All right, so I have an A, I have a B, and what I'm going to do is you're noticing that they came in as separate tabs. Now, the one workflow tip that I can give you if you're going from the design tool is being able to put them on one page so that you can gang and you can nest. So in this case, we are going to gang these onto one page. They are different items. And we're going to do this here with this merge area. So I only have one other file open. I am going to select it. I'm going to hit merge into tab. And now instead of being 2 separate jobs, they are one job. These would go on the same page. I can go down here and I can space these out. Put them on the same page. If I were doing something where I had others, I could merge them in. I also could go in, and if I needed 5 A's and 2 B's, I could actually go in and put those numbers in here and put the number that I need. So I need 5 A's and I need 2 B's. And now I have them all on the same page. I can easily print this. As you can see, the way we add the extra space is we add it to the left and we add it to the bottom. So by doing that, we're in a world where you're not getting that double. So in our previous program, if you added 0.5, it would add 0.5 to the left and the right, so you're actually getting an inch, even though you wanted a 1/2 inch. But what I would probably do on something like this is I would just center this whole thing on the page, give myself enough space that I could easily do that positioning that we saw. One of the speed enhancements is it doesn't immediately do it on center, but there we go. You can see that all centered and pretty. I'm ready to go. So that's kind of, if your workflow is you're coming from the design tool to here, that's what I would say goes. All right. So the next workflow is basically, well, let me close this just to show you how you would normally see it. You are bringing things in using the create button. So you are hitting create, you are going in and you're hitting add file, and then you are selecting your file. Now, I don't think I have anything fun that I can bring over. Let's see. I think these are generic. Yeah, they are. So if I were to bring two files in, it would put them on the same page. So this works well for a situation where your workflow is going to be exporting. So I would say generally you're only printing one or two things at a time. You're not doing a whole lot. Typically, this would be kind of your workflow if you're using Canva and you were doing an export, or maybe you were exporting in whatever program you were using and saving it as a PNG file. This would kind of be your workflow here. And it's really simple. The defaults are the standard defaults of the system, with the exception of what you have gone in and done in settings. So if I go to devices, I can set my default printer. And then within my default printer, I can actually choose my default paper size and my default paper tray. So if my default were actually that option tray instead of tray 1, I could set this here. The other thing you can do is you can set your default paper size. So you're basically saying every time it opens, the first paper I want to see is A4, and I could set that as my default. So when you are using this workflow and you are using that create button or this plus button here, your defaults that you are seeing are set in your settings. So what can we control there? We can control the paper size. We can control the paper tray. And so those are the things that you are setting, and your default printer. And that's what you see anytime you use this method. So again, if you're doing things where the product changes often, if you're only doing 2 or 3 projects at a time, those are the times where that workflow really works well. This is traditionally what I do. I typically create somewhere else, I export it. I'm going to use that create button and bring things in through the create button, and usually those default settings are enough for that particular workflow to be what I want to do. Now another method that you can use is the quick print folders. This is without a doubt what I recommend for any situation where you're doing lots of jobs at once. Also, it's what I'm going to recommend if more than one person is using the system. One of the head scratchers or stumpers that I had when I was on the support team was we actually had a person whose workflow was that one person created designs, they saved them, and then someone else on another day would actually be the person printing. We kind of kept that workflow in mind when we developed this version of the quick print folders. So Whenever you install the Sawgrass print utility, you immediately get a folder on your desktop. That's going to happen no matter what. But what you can do for that folder is choose all of your settings. So everything from doesn't mirror to what the product is, to if you are using vivid color mode, to if you are using spot colors, all of this can be set. So everything that you drop into that folder opens up with those settings as the default, and you don't have to change them. So in a higher volume situation where you're printing ornaments with baby pictures on them and you have 20 different baby pictures that you need to print, this is your workflow. Now, what you can do, and why I love this workflow so much, is you can create multiple folders. So you can add additional folders. So all of your ceramic jobs could go in one. All of your metal jobs could go in the other. Now, the beauty of this is if you're doing both photo ornaments and you are doing graphic ornaments, you can have two different folders, and one's default color setting is photo and one's default is graphic. You're taking the guesswork out, you're speeding everything up, you're not having to make changes, and you can drop them into the specific folder. Now, you saw auto print. We're going to talk about auto print again in a second. If your settings are set and you're not changing anything and you don't need to see the preset, or you don't need to see the preview, and you don't need to gang or nest, you're just doing one-offs, each one's its own page, go for it. Auto print applies all the settings, you drop it in the folder, they start coming out of the printer. So if you are in a high volume world, this is going to be really great for you. Now, you saw that you can choose multiple printers. The reason you can choose multiple printers is if you have 5 SG-1000s with Sublijet ink, it's going to rotate between those 5 printers if you select them. So you don't have to think, which printer did I use yesterday, which one did I use on Monday? It already knows for you, and it'll do that piece of the work too. So again, quick print folders, very, very good for situations where multiple people are interacting with it and where you're doing large volumes. You don't have to stop between each and check the settings and make sure it's going to the right printer and all of that stuff. It's got it. You set in the quick print folders, you're ready to go. So this is a great workflow for anyone doing a large volume. And hopefully for all of you who sell, it's almost Christmas season. So hopefully you'll need quick print folders. The other thing you can do is you can pause them. That means you're dropping things in the folder and they're not automatically opening in the Sawgrass print utility. That's for my friend from years ago where one person designed and then one person did the printing. They didn't have to have a separate folder and drop it in anymore. They can just unpause it and they all open up. All right. The next workflow we want to talk about is send to Sawgrass print utility. This is where you are printing directly from a program other than the My Sawgrass design tool, and you were sending it to the Sawgrass print utility. Now, this workflow works great if you are using a program where you're not exporting, you just want to open it and print it. Great. The other time this comes in handy is if you're using a program like Corel Draw, where you can create multiple pages. So you have a 10-page document. You can do the same workflow in Illustrator, InDesign. There's a few others where you are doing high volume, and the fact that you may have a 10-page document, you just go to File, Print, choose the Send to Sawgrass print utility as your printer name, and it's going to open. Now, I clicked on Settings, and I clicked on Send to Sawgrass print utility because this is where you set those presets. So this is what is going to open up with. So these are those default settings. Again, you were seeing very similar to what we just looked at in the quick print folders. And you're seeing all of those settings here, and those are the defaults. So anytime you need to set a high level of defaults so that you're not having to change things in the program on the spot, you're going to use either send to Sawgrass Print Utility, or you're going to use the quick print folders. You can change some things if you're using the other method, or you're sending it from the design tool. But really, if your thing is you want everything preset and you don't want to mess with it and you want the defaults to be exactly what they need to be, those are your two methods. It really just depends on whether you have files like PDFs and PNGs and JPEGs, or whether you have a file in a program that you want to send directly, as to which of the two you use. Again, I'm a big fan of exporting and doing it, but it really depends on what workflow works best for you. And if you're looking for that high level control over what your defaults are, send to Sawgrass Print Utility or the quick print folders. Set those settings here, and then you can send 10 files and not even worry about it. You're going to be set and ready to go. All right, so Rhodes, my last time of asking. Any questions or comments?
We have no questions or comments.
I hit it perfect today. I pestered him exactly 3 times. Very proud of myself on that. All right, so that's it. Those are those 3 workflow pieces that I hope help you. If you have those tickets with our tech support team, or have had those tickets with our tech support team, please thank them for bringing that to my attention so that we could cover it with you today. And I hope this helped. So next week is going to be a lot of fun. We on Tuesday are going to talk about adding shirts with VersaFlex to what you sell. But we're going to go further than that. I have something really exciting I want to show you and talk to you about. We're going to talk about pricing. That was actually what we're going to talk about today, was pricing. I moved that to next week so I can kind of review some stuff with you. So we're going to talk about pricing your items to pay yourself. So that's going to be part of Tuesday. And then Wednesday, we are going to do some upcycling of clothes with VersaFlex. So VersaFlex is the topic for next week. I'm really excited. And then we're going to get into some selling things too. So that'll be fun. We are recording a new podcast this week that will go live next week. Just as a reminder, our podcast, Ink Differently, can be found on Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music. Please check it out. We've had some really great ones, and I know next week's going to be another favorite. So that's it for me. I hope you have a good rest of your week, and I hope you have a good rest of your Wednesday, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.